If this didn't break Russia, it rewrote global power. Russia's sanctions were sold as an economic kill switch, but kill switches don't come with refunds. The promise was simple: freeze the money, collapse the system, end the war pressure fast. Instead, energy bills jumped, inflation spiked, and markets got nervous. People felt it at the pump, at checkout, and in retirement accounts. So why did punishing Moscow end up squeezing households elsewhere? The surface story says sanctions failed or succeeded. Pick a side and move on. But the real story is messier, like stress fractures spreading through concrete. Trade rerouted, currencies adapted, and new alliances quietly formed. What looked like isolation exposed how interconnected and fragile the system really is. This wasn't a clean strike. It was a global stress test. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Russia survived and why that matters to you. You'll see how energy, trade, and finance rewired under pressure. More importantly, you'll see what this teaches about future conflicts and markets. This isn't history, it's an active shift happening now. Stay until the end, because the final question might flip how you see sanctions entirely. Chapter 1. The Sanctions Shock. The world threw everything at Russia at once and expected the Russian economy to fold in weeks. Banks were cut, money frozen, planes grounded, and tech banned almost overnight. The bet was simple: choke the cash flow, trigger panic, force political instability. It sounded airtight, almost surgical, like flipping a breaker and killing the lights. So why didn't the Russian economy survival story end right there? After the Ukraine invasion, Russia's sanctions hit at historic speed and scale. Major banks were removed from SWIFT, cutting off global payments in days. Roughly $300 billion in foreign reserves were frozen, an unprecedented financial strike. The assumption was brutal and clear: Russia would run out of dollars, imports, and time. Markets priced in collapse, but instead, the sanctions' impact global economy rippled outward. Think of it like firing someone mid-paycheck and assuming their life instantly unravels. Russia absorbed the shock by leaning inward, tightening control, and triaging damage. Prices jumped, imports vanished, but the state didn't lose its grip on daily life. For viewers, this matters because energy bills, inflation, and markets reacted fast. The unresolved risk is this: once expectations break, sanctions lose their fear factor. Chapter 2. Energy as a Weapon. The sanctions were designed to starve Russia, but oil and gas kept the lights on. While banks were frozen, tankers kept moving, and pipelines kept humming. Energy didn't just soften the blow, it flipped the leverage. Russia's energy exports turned from a weakness into a pressure point. So how did oil and gas sanctions end up hurting the buyers too? Europe depended on Russian gas for heating, power, and industry. There was no quick substitute. When supply tightened, prices exploded, feeding inflation across households and factories. Oil exports didn't stop, they rerouted, often at a discount, but in massive volumes. Price caps sounded tough, yet volume mattered more than headlines. Russia didn't lose energy revenue overnight. European consumers lost purchasing power instead. Think of it like trying to boycott your landlord while still needing heat in winter. Russia-India oil flows surged, and China quietly absorbed discounted supply. Meanwhile, European governments paid subsidies to keep voters calm. For viewers, this showed up as higher bills, weaker currencies, and job pressure. But this energy leverage becomes dangerous when global demand finally cools. Chapter 3. The Pivot East and South. Sanctions assumed Russia needed the West, but Russia only needed buyers. When Europe slammed the door, Moscow didn't beg, it rerouted. Trade didn't vanish, it changed direction. Russia-China trade and Russia-India oil became lifelines almost overnight. So what happens when the global economy turns out to be optional? China ramped up imports of Russian energy, commodities, and industrial inputs. India went from a minor buyer to a major destination for discounted oil. Shadow fleets, intermediaries, and new shipping routes filled the gaps. Payments moved through non-Western banks, local currencies, and workarounds. The result, Russian economy survival without needing European approval. Think of it like losing one big client but finding 5 smaller ones fast. Russia didn't replace every dollar, but it replaced enough volume to function. This fractured the idea of a unified sanctions front in practice. For viewers, it reshaped markets, supply chains, and commodity prices worldwide. But this patchwork trade system creates vulnerabilities if trust breaks. Chapter 4. Financial Adaptation and Control. The ruble was supposed to crash and take Russian society with it. Instead, it stabilized faster than many Western currencies during inflation spikes. That wasn't market magic, it was force. Russia rewired its financial system under pressure. So how do you stop a currency collapse without investor trust? The government imposed capital controls almost immediately. Exporters were forced to convert foreign currency into rubles. Interest rates were hiked hard, then slowly eased as stability returned. Imports were replaced with domestic substitutes, sometimes worse, sometimes workable. Daily life got tighter, but chaos never arrived. Think of it like emergency surgery without anesthesia, painful but controlled. Russia's political structure allowed policies democracies couldn't impose fast. Savings were protected at the cost of freedom and choice. For viewers, this matters because markets price stability, not comfort. But this model cracks if pressure lasts longer than public patience. Chapter 5. What this means for the world. Sanctions were supposed to be a knockout punch, but Russia stayed standing. That single fact quietly changed global power calculations. Geopolitical sanctions no longer look like an instant kill switch. They look slow, messy, and uneven. So what happens when deterrence stops deterring? Other countries watched Russia survive Ukraine's sanctions in real time. Parallel payment systems expanded, local currencies gained traction, and trust shifted. De-dollarization Russia trends accelerated, not as ideology, but insurance. This didn't just affect Moscow, it reshaped trade talks and alliances. Sanctions' impact global economy now includes fragmentation, not just pressure. Think of it like seeing someone survive a fall everyone feared was fatal. It changes how high the cliff looks next time. For viewers, this matters for investments, energy exposure, and political risk. Defense, commodities, and regional ETFs suddenly feel less abstract. But the unresolved tension is this: if sanctions lose power, what replaces them? Russia's survival isn't a footnote, it's a warning label. Sanctions are still powerful, but they're no longer predictable. Understanding this helps you read headlines, markets, and policy moves better. It explains why energy, inflation, and geopolitics feel permanently tense. This story is still unfolding, not closing. Outcomes aren't fixed even when systems look rigid. Pay attention to energy trends, currency shifts, and trade routes. Read beyond headlines. Books on economic warfare and global trade help. Think in systems, not slogans, when watching world events. Awareness is leverage in an uncertain world. Did sanctions actually weaken Russia or just change the battlefield? Which country do you think learned the most from this episode? Could this strategy backfire again in the future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep learning how geopolitics, economics, and power shape your everyday life.